Welcome everybody to today's webinar, Improving Your Bottom Line Through Operational Excellence. I'm Kevin Iguano, I'll be your host for today. On the call today, we have Sandeep Banerjee, a senior consultant with Procept Associates and an expert in process improvement and operational excellence. Sandeep has many years of experience working through many different industries on these topics, and he's going to be a fascinating speaker for today. This is one in a series of webinars we conduct roughly every 2 weeks throughout the year. It will be recorded and posted to YouTube later. So for those of you listening to this on YouTube, welcome. This is not a live event. So when we ask people to enter questions in the chat windows and stuff, if you're watching the recording, obviously you won't be able to participate in that format. I'm going to ask the live attendees, please enter your questions in the chat window or the questions window, and we will address them towards the end of the presentation. We'll let Sandeep go through his presentation, and then we will leave times for questions at the end. So Sandeep, take it away.
Thanks, Kevin. Well, first of all, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone, and thank you for joining this webinar and to join me on this discussion about how to improve your bottom line through operational excellence. So before I talk about this topic, just wanted to give you a little bit about myself. Well, okay. Yeah, so well, I'm passionate about process improvement and continuous improvement, and I would say that I've spent about 25 years in the operational excellence space, in which during this journey I have worked with more than 50 organizations across 15 plus countries. And what I've done is I've helped these organizations in building their capability and transforming their businesses and business processes as well. As part of this journey, I've also conducted more than 300 workshops on various topics, including project management and business analysis. And here today, as you can understand from my passion, I wanted to share the various learnings and experiences that I've gathered over the 25 years. But I would say that my journey is still going on, and I'm still learning every moment. And I hope that this session will be able to give you some new perspectives about the challenges and things that you might have at hand, and might help you to solve some of the problems in your organization as well. And as Kevin mentioned, I would love to take some more questions towards the end of this session and would like to respond to them. So yeah, before we begin with the topic on operational excellence, I just thought of putting some thoughts to ponder over. If you are a consultant, you may want to put your client into perspective, or if you're part of an organization, so think about the organization you're working for. And just ask yourself, is the organization achieving business results? Are you going where you should be going? Do you think the processes within the organizations are adding value? So for example, are you able to deliver more effectively and efficiently? Are the processes making sense? Is there any scope for process automation? There is always a lot of manual tasks, repetitive tasks. So is there any scope for process automation in your organization? Do you think the organizational policies, procedures, processes inside the organization, they are still relevant? Are they really helping the business to perform the way they should be? Do you think it's too difficult to make changes, resistance, for example, in the organization? Do you think there is scope for innovation? Well, things have been in the organization for quite a long time. So there is need for innovation, there is need for breakthrough. Well, the answer to any one or more of these questions is yes. Then it's time to talk operational excellence. First of all, what is operational excellence? Well, if you talk to people or if you Google, you will find various different descriptions and definitions about operational excellence. But I would try to put it in a very simple way and that's my understanding about what is operational excellence, is it's basically a desire to improve. It's a desire to be better than the best. And this includes to have a mindset for continuous improvement, and a mindset to stay out of your comfort zone. Um, that takes me to a thought or a conversation that I had with one of my bosses, and I think it was a long time back, maybe about 20 years back, but I still remember, and I took that very seriously. So it was one of our career discussions with him, and he said one thing very, very, very interesting. He says, you know what, Sandy, your career should be seen like an S curve. So what happens is when you start with a role or a competency or a skill set, you learn, you grow in that role, and over a period of time you mature, and then you reach the peak of your career. And once you reach the peak of your career, no doubt you're performing at your best. But keep in mind that the next step is a decline stage. So if you are cognizant about that, and if you're aware of about that particular step, you should know that you should start a new S curve right when you're at the peak of your career. Well, that thing stayed with me for forever. And I thought about that it is not just a career where this concept applies, but this applies probably everywhere. You look at an organization's growth, you look at processes, you look at systems, you look at anything within an organization or an individual, you will see that this phenomena exists everywhere. And I would say this is one of the bases for operational excellence, because one has to remember that if you are not open to change, or if you are not ready to stay out of your comfort zone to embrace what needs to be done at that time, you are definitely going to decline as an individual or as an organization. So with that mindset, I would describe that operational excellence is two things. One, an urge to be open to change, and a spirit for a continuous improvement. So with that, I move on to what are the key elements of operational excellence. Um, well, we all have been hearing about these three key elements like process, people, systems, or tools. I'm sure there's nothing new in this, but I would like to put a new perspective here. I see these three elements as the triple constraints of project management, like the time, cost, quality, where if you touch one component, you are going to impact the other two. Similarly here, if you touch one, for example, you update the processes, you change the processes, but you don't provide the necessary training to people, or you don't have the right people in the organization to follow the processes, things are not going to work. Similarly, if you have systems which are totally modern and latest, but you have processes which are not going to support the workflow which your systems require, things are not going to work. Similarly, if you have people who are absolutely talented and they are really great, but you don't have processes and systems in the organization, again, you're not going to be very productive. So that's what I'm trying to focus here, that whenever you think of operational excellence, or when you think of continuous improvement, we are thinking of people, process, and tools to work together. So whenever you're thinking of an improvement journey, you're trying to stitch them together. And when you are working on this, definitely the concepts of change management is the key. So with that, um, you need to start from somewhere. And I would say the starting point should be an organization's vision and mission, because you don't want to go out of the framework of your organization. You want to stay within what needs to be done for the organization. If that requires you to change or review your vision, mission, goals, do that. But your efforts, your initiatives on operational excellence preferably needs to be within the framework of your organization. As a starting point, you would definitely like to know the organizational inefficiencies. You would like to know what are the dark spots, what are the weak spots in your organization's processes or your as an organization as a whole. So how do you go about that? The first thing you would like to do is talk to people. An organization has systems, processes, and tools, but who's using them? Who's driving them? It's the people. So you would like to talk to people at all different levels of staff and management. For example, you start talking to the leadership team, and they may tell you, oh boy, we spend a lot of time and a lot of money on rework. We lose customers, we lose time, we lose competition. Now, you go down and talk to the project managers or the middle management. They'll tell you, we are just bombarded with customer requirements. There are changes coming and coming forever, and we have very limited resources and time. How do we go about it? So there is a lot of operational challenges. And when you talk to people at the project level or people who are delivering projects, they may tell you, you know what, we don't have systematic processes. We receive change requests, but hardly has anybody analyzed those changes. We don't know what's the impact of that change. So what you get to hear is you hear a business problem from the leadership team. You get to know the operational issues, and you also understand what processes are creating those issues. So this is the first step to identify what are the weak spots in your organizations, what is not working well in your organization by talking to people. And once you get to know what are the processes which are not working, what do? You try to do a process mapping. You try to identify what are the holes in the processes. So for example, when you draw process flowcharts or when you do process mapping, start to end, you will list down your activities, you will list down your inputs and outputs, you will list down the people who are accountable for each step or responsible for each step and so on. You will definitely identify the holes in the processes. So for example, a particular step X, we don't know what are the outputs of that particular step. What is the entry criteria for that particular process step? So along the line, you will definitely identify what are the holes in the processes. Another way to identify inefficiencies would be to review and analyze defects from your products and customer feedback. These are some of the most powerful ways of identifying what's going wrong in your operations. Even if you take, let's say, about once in 3 months or once in 2 months, a kind of a root causal analysis session, and try to go back to the processes that are creating these defects or giving you customer complaints, I'm sure you will get a lot of insights on what needs to be improved. So that's first. Second, perform a SWOT analysis: strength, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. We talked about weaknesses, and weaknesses can definitely be exploited because of threats. But it's not always weakness and threats. It's also about your strengths and the opportunities that you can explore because of the strengths you have, and the strengths that you can leverage to overcome the weaknesses. So look at your strengths. For example, in this example, we know we have weaknesses in process maturity, but at the same time, we have good talent, we have experience in the organization. So how about using that to strengthen our processes? So identify your strengths and see how you can use them to convert your weaknesses into stronger points. So once you go through all this, what would be the next step is to prioritize. I would say prioritize in three parts. One, a short term, and I would typically call short term as 0 to 6 months or maybe a year. A midterm could be 1 to 2, 2 to 3 years, and a long term, anything which can go beyond 3 years time frame. When you look at short term, you might want to look at things that are more foundational, things that are more basic to be fixed so that your operations are smooth. So for example, we talked about change management process. So that could fall under a short-term plan. So you would like to, for example, design a process. You want to develop systems that can use the processes. So fixing foundational things like a change management process or a defect management process or something like that, which is very basic to your business at this point, could fall under a short-term thing. Midterm could be things which could fine-tune on what the foundations you have put here. So for example, you have set up a change management process. So you would like to see that the change management process has been implemented consistently in different situations, in different contexts. And the change management process might be working together with other subordinate processes. So are these working together or not? So you're basically fine-tuning on the foundational elements that you have put together as a short-term plan. And when you move on to the long term, you're actually talking about optimizing your processes. You're actually talking about increasing the capability of your processes. And how do you do that? It's basically you are adopting industry best practices, or you're talking about adopting quality standards so that you're able to fine-tune your processes and benchmark your processes against the best ones. So be clear on the outcomes, prioritize your requirements, prioritize your expectations, prioritize your process improvement, your systems improvement, and put that as a part of your roadmap. And when you do that, it's very important to adopt a structured framework for process improvement. So we all know plan, do, check, act. It's a Deming cycle. Have that framework in place so that you can carry out your process improvement in a more structured manner. As a part of planning, I would say there are certain key elements that are important to consider here. First thing, here we're talking about a continuous improvement of processes. So we need to have people in the team who understand, who can develop processes, and who can implement processes. So the first thing starts from developing a process engineering team. Typically, this could be a team which could be led by a quality expert or a process improvement expert. And this could have representation from different units, different business units, different functions, different departments. Let's say from purchasing, from marketing, from design, and so on. So what happens here? People from different teams come together as part of this engineering team. They would develop, first of all, they would identify what needs to be developed on a priority. Second, they would develop the processes. They will make sure that there is consistency when you develop processes. Third, they will take these processes back to their functions, their teams, and get them rolled out, get them implemented. And fourth, and most important, get the feedback from these functions back to this engineering team and tell what's working, what's not working, and so on. And the best thing for this team to have is a direct reporting to the senior leadership team so that the leadership team knows about what's going on with continuous improvement in the organization. Now, when we talk about this improvement, I would suggest that we think agile. As the world is moving towards agile, projects are adopting agile frameworks. It's time that process improvement also follows an agile framework. For example, once again, taking the change management process as an example, you don't have to probably think of developing the whole process and wait for perfection to happen. Start with the steps. Start developing the intake process, apply it, implement it, test it out, see if it's working or not, then go for the next step. That's the assessment piece. So you would be more successful. You would be able to understand whether your processes are failing or you're able to be successful with those processes if you adopt an agile framework. Take small pieces of process improvement, do it, implement it, test it, get feedback, and then build on that. So that is, I would say, one of the most optimized way of defining processes, and also that way it will help businesses. So businesses don't wait forever for a perfect process to come. Businesses start with what's available and they start making improvements. Plan for communication management. And I would emphasize that the most important thing here is communicate the why behind the change. Communicate why the change in the process. That's most important. Plan for stakeholder engagement. Well, that's something most important. You would identify the stakeholders. You would identify how you would engage those stakeholders, at what step, at what stage, and how you will influence the stakeholder engagement. Set up process for continuous feedback. Again, if you're thinking agile, you would understand that continuous feedback is something which can drive your success. So if you don't have feedback, you don't know whether you are heading for success or failure. Set up channels to capture lessons learned. Each time you are implementing a change, try to capture what went wrong, what could be done better. Build knowledge repository. I've seen organizations that um, solve problems, but then don't capture how did they solve the problems. Imagine creating knowledge articles and making them accessible, making them available to people who need to kind of go through that path again. So building knowledge repository will help you to be more efficient, and you don't have to reinvent the wheel each time you're repeating the same process again. And focus on relationship building. Well, you may call it a soft skill, but this is something which is very fundamental when you are introducing change, when introducing continuous improvement. Put all that together into a roadmap. And when you're talking of roadmap, once again, I'd like to emphasize, think process, people, and systems together. See that these things are going hand in hand. See that these three things are working together. Key points: be sure about the expected deliverables. What is expected? When can you say that this is a success? Think for technology upgrades, and always define a trial period. That's I would say is one of the mantra for success. That whenever you define any process, you don't deploy the process straight away. You would give it a trial. You would try and see whether the process works or not. So always have that step as part of your roadmap. Deployment strategy and key expectations. Now, what I mean by this, whenever you're coming up with any improvement, you don't deploy all across the organization. You would have a strategy. Well, not all projects are equally important. You may want to prioritize which are the projects which might need to adopt your new changes. What are the things which are most important for the business? How do you put them first, second, and third? So you may always have a strategy instead of going full scale all the time. Evaluation of your process. Your roadmap should also include a step for evaluating your processes. As you keep trying, as you keep implementing, you also keep evaluating whether the process outcomes are what exactly you expected or not. So are the results what you were expecting? Yes, education. You must train the people. You must educate people on why the change, how to use the processes, and how to use the systems and tools. Talk about the change, why the change. and plan to coach and facilitate. Well, I'd like to highlight one difference here between training and coaching. Training, you would let people know what needs to be done and how it needs to be done. Whereas coaching, you would like to work together with them and make sure that they're able to follow it. They're able to use them. They're able to meet the challenges. They're able to resolve their difficulties. You're able to facilitate the implementation. It's like more of hand-holding. So without the coaching piece, the training might be incomplete. And I've seen this is one of the biggest problems that organizations go through. They would define, they would change, they would train, they would let people do it. But it's important to have that phase of coaching and facilitating. Make the change, make the necessary process updates, make the system configurations, changes, and whatnot, whatever is required. And make sure that people have the right competencies. Make sure that the people have the appropriate skills as needed to follow these processes and systems. Assess the environment. So as you have been implementing, you have been going through the change, make sure that your goals are aligned, make sure that you're not going out of your way, make sure that you are getting the right results. Impact on the organization. So try to understand whether things are making any difference to the organization or not. Is it making a positive impact or negative impact on people? That's very important for you to know. Keep an eye on whether people feel the change, whether people are really able to take an advantage of that change, whether the business is going positive or not. And stakeholder feedback. Continue to receive feedback from stakeholders. Now here, stakeholders would mean not only internal ones, but also external. For example, you might have set up a process for your vendors. Try to conduct surveys and see whether it makes them feel better dealing with you or not. So it could be both external as well as internal stakeholders. When you get results, when you get these feedback, act on them. Things might be going good. What could be better? So as I said, operational excellence is all about going from the uh, having a continuous improvement mindset. So how can you make things better if something is working good? Um, Coming to my key lessons learned from my journey, what to avoid. I've seen organizations trying to force fit standard solutions. Well, it worked for the previous projects. It can work for this. No, things are changing. The context is changing. The customer is different. The product is different. So the standard solution may not work. So what could you do? You could be tailoring the solutions. You could be customizing the solutions. What is important is to meet the intent of the process. What is not important is to follow the process description step by step. So try to make processes more friendly towards business. What can help the business? What can help the project teams? I've seen organizations focusing on certifications and not improvement. Well, we need to certify, we need to get the stamp. Well, that kills the whole essence of continuous improvement. We started with change, but we're doing it just to get a certification, just to get an audit done. No, you're killing the whole spirit. And that way, you're killing the whole culture of the organization. Compliance over organizational learning. I've seen some organizations coming up with new set of processes and so on, and then trying to enforce compliance. Oh, our people must follow. Well, sometimes it might be important, but most of the times I would say it's not important. What is more important is whether the organization is learning or not, whether the organization is making improvement or not, whether the organization is improving or not. Not involving people. Well, as I said, identifying the inefficiencies in the organization. If you don't involve people, you don't get to know what's going on. You have to involve people at each stage. There will be resistance. There will be people who might just challenge you again and again. But I tell you from my experience, The more you involve people, the more you will actually overcome those issues. Big bang approach. Well, here is a process, go, take it, implement it. It doesn't work. It just, you're just heading for failure. So as I said, take an agile approach, take an incremental approach, and have a strategy for deployment of your processes instead of going big bang. Ineffective measurement program. People try to measure too many things, so much of data. You see about 50, 100 metrics in an organization. We say, what are you doing with those numbers? We don't know. You might just need a handful, maybe top 3 metrics, maybe top 5 measurements that can help you. And once again, the measurement program should be ideally be tied with your process improvement. So for example, we identified there was a problem with the change management process. So have a measurement to measure the effectiveness of change management process. Measure what's important. Set up for success. So what are the mantras? 1, make sure that you're aligned with the vision, mission, and goals of the organization. That helps you to get the buy-in from people, that helps you to stay within your framework, that helps you to be more productive. Respect everyone. Get ideas from everyone. Everyone has an idea. Everyone has something to say. It may sound negative to you, but it's something which might be having a different perspective altogether. Humility. You don't know everything yourself, so you are working as part of the team. So be humble, be open to people around you. Perfection. Yes, you should aim for perfection, but don't wait for perfection. Go incremental. Make the changes happen. Continue to improve, to strive for perfection. Embrace new concepts and technologies. Things are changing every moment. Today, automation is a big thing. Go for automation, go for the tools, go for the right platforms. Tie them together, people, process, and systems. Create value. Whatever you bring change, ask yourself, is it really helping you to deliver things more effectively and efficiently? Is it really helping your customer to feel better? Is it making a vendor to feel better to deal with you? And listen, be open. So here, these are some of the tips that I could collect from my experience, from my learning. And I hope this will help you to get some more perspectives, some new perspectives about how to drive continuous improvement and how to drive operational excellence in your organization. Right, I'm open for questions.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Sandeep, okay, so everybody who has a question to ask, please type it in the chat window or the questions window, and I will relay them to Sandeep for answering. Okay, so enter in the chat window or the questions and answer window. By the way, while we're waiting for questions, if you're interested in having Sandeep come and help you on your change initiatives and your operational excellence initiatives, you can reach him through sales@procept.com, sales@procept.com, and we will be happy to help you out. Okay, the first question comes from Sanjeev. Sanjeev says, you talked about prioritization. Other than short-term, medium, and long-term, what factors would you consider when prioritizing?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I would say definitely look at your organization's vision, mission, and goals. So what is the most important thing for your business goals? What are your customers expecting? Not just customers, what are your vendors expecting? It is both ways. So look at things internally as well as externally. Look at what your business requires you to drive. So like in my example, change management process, probably that was something which was both important from an internal as well as external from a customer's perspective. So hence that goes into the overall roadmap. But look at that way, you look at the overall set of weaknesses, your weak spots, your black spots, and look at things that need to be changed, and things which are affecting your business, and that should actually fall into your roadmap, short term, midterm, and long term.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Siobhan makes a comment, says, thinking agile for process development improvement is similar to the concept of lean startups or agile startups, where you start the new business and learn and grow quickly, adapting to customer and marketplace feedback. Can you comment?
You mean to say this is just for the startups, or?
What Siobhan says is, you mentioned thinking agile for process development improvement, and she comments that that seems similar to the concept of lean startups or
Yeah.
agile startups, where they start the new business and then learn and adapt to customer and marketplace feedback.
Yeah. So basically, what I mean to say here is that traditionally, process improvement has been always seen as more of a waterfallish thing. So you define processes and kind of wait for processes to become perfect and then start implementing. But being agile, being more of the modern way of working, not just the startup companies, but even organizations who are large and who are quite stable and who have kind of very complicated products and platforms, they are also adopting agile, because again, that is meant to help you to reach out to the customer as quickly as possible. That is also there to help you learn more faster. So as you develop products, you are learning what are the holes, what are the weaknesses in your system. So hence, developing processes in an agile manner also helps you to deliver quickly things that your projects might need. For example, um, your project might be looking out for a checklist, maybe a release management checklist. So instead of waiting for 6 months, kind of just start with things that maybe just come up with a release management checklist that could be used by the project. So be more quick in your turnaround, be more quick in delivering what your processes need to be given to your projects. So that's what I mean by being more agile, is to deliver things in smaller iterations. Whether big, small, or large organizations, it can always be more helpful.
Okay, very good. The next question is from Amir. Amir says, you said do not deploy a process without a trial first. Can you give us tips for a successful trial of a new process?
Yeah, exactly. So that's a great question. So, uh, by trial, what I mean, for example, now if I take, for example, software development applications, let's say you come up with a new testing process or some changes to the testing process. So you may not apply that process to a project which is probably just at the beginning of the life cycle, but you may want to put that process to a project which is right now just entering the testing stage. So you may want to pick up projects where you can apply the new processes based on the life cycle of the project. So what I mean by trial is try to see whether that works for that particular situation or for that project or not. What changes you might want to bring to that particular process? What what are the things that you may want to tweak before you actually ask other projects to apply that particular process? So try out the piece of process which is most applicable or which is most making sense to a particular service or to a project at that point of time, so that you can also get quick feedback about that process and make the necessary changes as needed. I hope that helps.
Okay, thank you. Yep, thank you. Remember, everybody, please type your questions into the chat window or questions window. We have another question here from Letitia. Letitia says, what about selling improvements? You did a brief description of change management, but is there more we can do?
Yeah, exactly. And so selling improvements, definitely there are two things. One, um, if you are trying to solve a business problem where you have the buy-in from the leadership team and people who are involved in it, you definitely have to work much lesser in selling. But and that's why I say that if you are adopting an agile framework, if you are adopting the agile methodology for process improvement, you're taking up small changes, making the difference, showing the people that the changes are making a difference to the bottom line. And that's how you will gain more acceptance, and your selling will be much more easier going forward. But instead, if you try to sell something which is not a burning need or not a burning desire, or of the business or of the people, it's not going to help anyone right away. You're definitely going to need to sell much more harder. So go back to your priorities and try to see whether the change that you're bringing in is going to make a difference or not. Try to start small, even if it means, for example, I can take an example of the change management process in an organization, which was totally a chaotic process. But we started with step by step an intake process, intake piece of the change management. Well, that helped a lot to the people who were receiving changes. So there was a lot of redundancy that got improved and changed. So if you are able to show smaller improvements by bringing in small changes, people will, kind of agree with you, and probably they will accept you even more. I hope that helps.
Okay, very good. Very good. Everybody, please remember, type your questions into the chat window or the questions window. There's no questions in the queue at the moment. Remember, everybody, this is one in a series of webinars we do roughly every 2 weeks throughout the year. So wherever you found out about this webinar, go back and look to see if there's more listed. You should be able to find additional webinars you can sign up for as they proceed throughout the year. This is part of Procept's give back to the community, on giving back to our clients and the public on some of the topics that our experts find interesting and find relevant to people who might be interested in getting used to this topic. If there's any more questions, please enter them now. Last chance. Okay, it looks like there's no additional questions. Thank you very much, Sandeep. Remember, anybody who wants to talk to Sandeep or get more information about process improvements, if you're interested in training or consulting on these topics, please reach out to sales@procept.com. Thank you very much, Sandeep. It was a great time. I learned a lot. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. Thanks, everyone. Have a nice day. Bye.